This is Canes Corner with Adam Gold, a production of 99.9 The Fan. Now, here's your host, Adam Gold.
Eric Staal, the second overall pick. Big, tall, lanky center iceman.
Jeff O'Neill centering feed. Eric Staal scores. First NHL goal for Eric Staal.
Staal has room. Here he comes with goal. He scores! Eric Staal does it again.
One season removed from nearly stunning the Detroit Red Wings in the Stanley Cup Finals, the Carolina Hurricanes crashed back down to earth. If that 2002 run was magic, well, the following year was tragic, and the Canes finished dead last in the league with just 61 points. But it did present the opportunity to add a franchise-changing player, and that player, Eric Staal from Thunder Bay, Ontario, will have his number hanging in the rafters next to those worn by Rod Brind'Amour, Ron Francis, and Glenn Wesley. In Hurricanes history, Eric Staal basically holds all the records, games, goals, points, power play goals, and he's the star of some of the franchise's most iconic moments. Let's start June 21st, 2003, the NHL Draft.
All-around player, and the only knock on him at this point is that Mother Nature hasn't done its work with him yet, being 180-odd pounds on a 6'3" frame. This guy's going to play well over 210 when he finally physically matures and is going to be a force to be reckoned with. A great skater. He's got a fifth year out of Thunder Bay, and they're producing a lot of great hockey players at the minor hockey level right now, and in fact, some of them are his younger brothers. One of his younger brothers can't be here, Mark Staal, a first-round pick in the Sudbury Wolves. He's at the Ontario Under-17 camp. His other younger brothers are with him here. They are big, strong kids. They're both great hockey players, and you're going to hear a lot about the Staal family in hockey circles going forward.
Jim Rutherford was the general manager of the Hurricanes at the time.
Well, he was a well-rounded player with a high skill level, and when we looked into his background, including his whole family, just great character. And that point in time, we were in the midst of kind of transitioning the team a little bit. Ronnie Francis was getting more towards the end of his career. Roddy Brind'Amour was getting more to that step, and we needed a center. And interesting in that draft, it was, we had an off year. We were picking first until the lottery, and then Pittsburgh moved ahead of us. And people thought that we wanted Andre Fleury, which obviously would be a good choice. But we had taken Cam Ward in a prior draft, just prior to Eric's draft. And so we were really looking for a center. So we were happy that we could get a center like Eric, so he could carry on where Francis and Brind'Amour were when both those guys retired.
He's in a different realm because he is a homegrown player who was drafted, in the first round, as we know, and second overall, and the first skater taken in that draft because Marc-Andre Fleury was first overall as a goaltender. So he gets to an organization that obviously was in the spot that nobody wants to be, a lottery slot, a team that had fallen, from an incredible run in 2002. But now we're going to get a prime player and develop that player, and that's exactly what he did.
John Forsland, longtime TV voice of the Hurricanes, nailed it. He was the first original Hurricane star. Longtime teammate Chad LaRose also knew there was more than just natural ability.
Man, was he competitive. He was one of the most competitive people I've ever played with. He had a fire under him that drove everybody else, and I don't know if everybody always got to see that. I mean, I had a front row seat to it for about 10 years, so he was a super competitive guy.
Eric Cole, twice a teammate of Staal's, remembers the arrival in the fall of 2003.
He came in 18 years old and was, determined to make the team out of camp, and the organization wanted to give him an opportunity, and he went out and led the preseason in scoring. He played in every game. I think they just wanted to see, if he could handle the day in and day out, that the NHL season can put on you. And, he he did really well right from the start, and we knew we had a real special player.
That's Eric Cole, twice a teammate of Staal's, remembering the arrival in the fall of 2003. Unfortunately, Staal's sophomore season was eliminated, or at least delayed, due to the lockout that canceled the entire 2004-2005 season. And while many veterans played overseas or didn't play at all, the team could send their future star to the minor leagues to continue to develop.
It was probably one of the best things for him because it gave him an opportunity to go continue playing in the minors and the AHL and Lowell. And when he came back, you could just see the strides that he had made there, just strength and maturity, and his game was well, I mean, he was a 100-point scorer that year, so his game was right where it needed to be.
At the time, the Hurricanes were sharing a minor league affiliation with the Calgary Flames, and that is where he would meet and practice against defenseman Mike Commodore.
One of my first practices with Eric, it was just like kind of a 3-on-2 drill, or it might have even been kind of a little scrimmage a little bit. And I remember skating backwards, and I was just kind of trying to hold him up a little bit and whatever we were doing. And I remember he did a little move on me and blew by me, and I didn't even touch him. And I remember as I pivoted, I was like, woof.
He was just one of us. And Eric, to be honest with you, surprisingly is one of those guys that I can honestly say never changed. He never changed once. I started with him that year in 2003, 2004 is when I signed too with Carolina. And then 04, 05 we were together, and then we were together the rest of them till 2015 when I was done. But he never changed, which was so cool about him. He was always this humble, good guy on the ice, good guy off the ice, somebody who you could always talk to, was never arrogant, which is, I've seen so many, I've been around long enough to see guys, it changes them a little bit, and, rightfully so for some of those people. And Eric was never like that. And that's one of the things that's so attractive about him as people, gravitate to him, because he was always the same.
It would have been real easy for Eric to show up to Lowell and be like, I'm too good for this league, like riding the bus and kind of mail it in. And he was not like that at all. I never heard him complain about anything once. He always had fun with everything. And that would be one of the things I think that I took from him that was most impressive to me.
Commodore seems to agree with LaRose on Staal's high character. Eric Cole saw another opportunity for growth in Staal. It was really the chance to become a leader.
I think it was a little bit of a change from the year before where, he's there to soak up everything from Ronnie and Roddy and the leadership core that we had in Carolina. And he goes to Lowell and is, more a part of, the leadership there. And, he's kind of more or less playing with his peers and people that, that are closer to his age. And it's just a little different vibe for him, and so then he brings all that back to Carolina for his second season, and he was great.
Well, he had great leadership qualities when he was drafted, okay? And he showed all the signs of a guy that could be a team captain. And fortunate for him, he was around Ron Francis, then in the early part of his days in Carolina, Rod Brindamore, who he was mentored by. And then late in Roddy's career, Eric took over the captaincy, and part of the reason for that was that he could start being the captain with Roddy right there to take him through step by step, because it's, people don't realize how tough it is to be a captain and all the things that you deal with. But he grew into that, but which we knew he would. But getting that mentorship from those players was really important.
Then Hurricanes general manager Jim Rutherford. Now back to Chad LaRose, who has some inside information.
I was probably one of the first players to know. I knew the grumblings were going around he came up to the room, and we were roommates, and came up and said, they gave me the C. He didn't know how to feel about it, because he's just such a good guy, and we all love Roddy, right? Mm-hmm. And, and it was coming. There was rumblings about it and stuff like that. I think being such a gracious and great leader that Roddy is, I think he made that transition. I think him being there when that happened was helpful to Eric, because I'm sure they had conversations about this. And, I could feel it for him, because that's a hard thing.
I saw the burden of responsibility, and I keep going back to the days that were tough, because to me, that's when I saw Eric at his best. He never wavered. He was always steady. He was always trying to be a leader. He was a different leader than Rod. He was a different leader than Ronnie was.
John Forsland on the lean years, and one of the factors that in many ways challenged Staal's leadership.
We live in a generation now, Adam, where everybody knows what all these athletes make, and compensation is sometimes ahead of what they actually do. That's unfortunate, because we all play that game as a player in any sport. Fairly compensated, or is he not? And then that kind of clouds our evaluation of what's happening. Some of that was starting to happen with Eric, especially when he was given a huge contract extension to keep him in North Carolina, to keep him with the organization. And at the time, Jim Rutherford was doing his best to keep the team relevant, to drive ticket sales, to keep the team here. These were all things that needed to happen in and around Eric Staal's play.
I saw this act before with Ronnie Francis when people started saying in the organization's case, in that particular case in Hartford, where he's not a leader. He's not a guy that he's overrated in that intangible category or whatever. So I saw this movie before that happened to Ronnie before he was traded to Pittsburgh. But in this case, I can't put my finger on why the people felt that way. I don't know if it is you wear out your welcome, or there are unrealistic expectations of you as your career goes on. But I don't know how much more he could have done.
Hockey Hall of Fame radio voice Chuck Caton remembered when Ron Francis had to deal with many of the same criticisms as did Eric Staal. And Eric Cole remembers how his teammate was always the target.
He took the brunt of the criticism lots of times, even though it wasn't really deserved, but he also he carried the weight of the franchise on his shoulders. He felt like it was up to him, to be able to get us, over the hump and back in the playoffs, and to always have that kind of pressure on yourself to be, the guy, can't be easy.
You start reminiscing and thinking about all that stuff, and you're like, man, that had to be a lot. And you wouldn't have known it. I didn't know it as a player. I had no idea that he was getting all this stuff and all the things he had to do. And it probably, for me, it would have been painful, like to think about all the extra stuff I got to do, because now I'm in this limelight and they want me to do this, want me to do that. You would have never known with Eric.
From Chad LaRose on the trappings of being a star, to Cole on the burden of being the face of the franchise, and then TV analyst Trip Tracy when it became apparent that the star would have to leave.
It was our last year playing together, and we had the All-Star weekend, and he did just such a phenomenal job with that weekend. I can remember seeing him with this just booklet of all these things and responsibilities he had for that weekend, being the organization and the community's ambassador, for the NHL. And I thought he did just such a great job with it. And
a coffee in beautiful Vancouver. He'll be here Friday before a game out there. And at that point, Eric Staal knew that they weren't going to come to a new contract extension agreement, he knew that he was going to end up being moved. And he had seen two guys in particular, Jacob Slavin and Brett Pesce, that were on the blue line, and were having a coffee with this gorgeous Vancouver scenery before getting on the bus to go to the game behind us. And he was beyond heartbroken. And he said, Tripp, I've been here for all this, and now there is light at the end of the tunnel, and I've got to leave. I hope that puts it together why his number should be retired.
But there were so many great times, so many big goals, so many huge memories.
Eric Staal, 100-point season, only one in Hurricanes history. Led the playoffs in scoring. But when we'd go to Montreal and we talk about Rod Brindamore's goal to tie the game, after Brindamore tied it, when Carolina was generating nothing, Eric Staal scored in overtime. And John said, it's a series now.
Staal again closing. They look to set up Corey Stillman, who gives it back to Staal. Stillman again, this way it's Hennigan. Up top for Staal, a shot. Eric Staal has scored! She's a series now! The Carolina Hurricanes win it in overtime!
He had this yell on the ice whenever he scored. It could be a goal in an empty Phillips Arena back in the day in Atlanta. That was just a regular season goal that was, part of whatever the outcome of that game was. But he would let a yell fly whenever he scored that you could hear upstairs. And in the Bell Center, you hang right over the rink and broadcasting it, and you could hear that elation and feel the energy.
John Forsland and Chuck Caton walk us through what would forever be known as the shock at the Rock. Under 90 seconds to play, the Hurricanes were down a goal to legendary goalie Martin Brodeur and the New Jersey Devils.
Played to Pitkanen, to Jokinen on the near boards, to Pitkanen, slap pass across the slot. Oduya punched it away. Now Gleason a right point snapshot, that blocked by Prize. Gleason on a give and go on his knees. Directs it over to Pitkanen. A relay in front, they score! On the far side, UC Jokinen was set up with the Canes tying at 1840.
Having to adjust within seconds of what we do professionally to make something make sense because, first of all, the game was going to be over and lost, and then all of a sudden it wasn't. And now, okay, we're going to go to overtime.
Pitkanen and Gleason come out for Carolina. Off the draw, back of the goal, Motto. Moved off for Shanahan. Through the center ice area, Gleason is back in his own zone. Out to center for Chad LaRose, a chance for Staal. Staal walks in, he shoots one, he scores! Hey, what do you say? Eric Staal and the Canes have a 4-3 lead in Game 7.
And it's on Marty Brodeur. And it's another one of those things I think that we just talked about. It's Eric feeling the game in his hands, and I'm gonna do it. I'm going to do it right now. The man came through again, and so that's an iconic goal. That's an iconic goal in Canes history. That's an iconic goal in NHL history. A playoff goal in a Game 7 in regulation to seal it on the winningest goalie in the history of the game. Unbelievable circumstances.
With us being down, there was a lot of emotions. Reality is, our season could be over here with a minute and a minute and a half left in the game. Thinking we got to pull the goalie. So I'm thinking I'm going to be leaving and going out to us scoring, to us tying it. And then thinking, okay, well, now we got to hunker down and get ready for overtime to then us scoring with Eric shooting low blocker on Martin Brodeur. And then quickly it became, okay, well, geez, lock it down for 30 seconds and we're going to win this game. So it kind of still goes down as one of the best memory games that we've had together. And again, like he made that iconic shot against one of the best goaltenders to ever play the game.
I remember Tim Gleason throwing it up to me on the wall and Colin White coming to take my head off. And Staal just busted through, mirrored the puck, and flew through the middle. And I just basically slid it between Colin White's legs, and he grabbed it and ripped it low. And I remember how quickly the emotions were, because with 1:40 left, we scored, I think, with 1:31 left to tie it. And the emotions of looking over at New Jersey's bench, and all of them were standing up with 1:40 left. like we're going to win in Game 7. They were all standing. And the flip of that in that quick moment and just being able to jump into Staal's arms. And I remember, this is kind of funny, but I remember the lady behind Staal in the front row was giving him double middle finger. And as we were celebrating, and I think it was on the front page of the newspaper the next day.
Chad LaRose is 1 in a million, man. Primary assist. So now it's time for the sentimentality to take over. Sunday, even though the Vancouver Canucks will have left town after tonight's game, their president, Jim Rutherford, is sticking around to soak in what Eric Staal deserves.
I'm so happy the Hurricanes have respectfully done this for Eric and let the fans come and appreciate what Eric's done. And it just makes me really proud because I know what those players went through in the early stages trying to build the franchise, and they worked hard and won a cup, went to the finals one time, went to the conference finals, but I'm really happy the Hurricanes are doing this for Eric.
I'm so grateful and blessed to be able to play with a guy like that and have a guy like that as a friend. I think his personality and his heart reaches way beyond the locker room.
I'll probably have just a couple of flashbacks of our time together, and the 06 Cup run. Eric Staal's fingerprints are all over that. And I think more than anything else, I'll just be proud of Eric, and it was well deserved. He worked hard, he did things the right way, and I'm proud of him. That number's going where it belongs for sure. There's no question about that.
I think it's just going to be great for the city, the organization, the fan base. It's going to be a great moment. It's going to show what Raleigh is all about as a hockey fan base, and Eric was a big part of that. When we came in as young kids, the minor hockey system wasn't what it is today, and Eric's a big reason for that. For giving kids dreams and hopes, to play hockey in North Carolina. And whenever we think of number 12, you definitely think of Eric Staal, and couldn't be more proud of him to see his number up in the rafters.
LaRose, Commodore, Ward, all members of that 2004-2005 Lowell Lock Monsters team, and all with their names on the Stanley Cup.
He was everything. He was a great Hurricane. Gave everything he had for the organization when he was here. He was a great player. He was just a solid human being, as you know, just represented us really well. So I think it's really a great honor, and I'm glad we're doing it for him. And I'm looking forward to that for him, but I'm also looking forward to seeing some of the old guys, resurfacing, spending some time with those guys, because that obviously was a special group.
You've been listening to the Canes Corner podcast with Adam Gold.
Yeah, I want to drive the Zamboni. Yes, I do.
The Canes Corner podcast is a part of the Capital Broadcasting Podcast Network.